Welcome to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt. On the radio, on Facebook, on YouTube, on podcasts everywhere, and on talklawradio.com. Howdy, how are you today? We're on KLUP 930 AM The Answer in San Antonio, also 630 AM The Word. Don't forget to check us out on Sunday afternoons at 4:30. Also Saturdays on KNTH 1070 in Houston and 103.3 FM in Houston. Today we're going to be talking about what will are you missing from your estate plan? I'm Todd Marquardt, and today we're going to be talking about ethical wills and legacy letters. But first, let's check in with Jacob Warren, who's going to give us the financial focus. Jacob's with Financial Planning HQ, and he works alongside his father Steve and brother Joseph, and they create inspiring financial strategies for families and business owners in San Antonio. Jacob's been a financial advisor for over 10 years and is passionate about helping young business owners plan their financial success. Jacob, you love the outdoors, and most importantly, being a husband to your wife, Catherine, and father to your two kids, Arthur and Camille.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Todd. It is great to be here. Look forward to the show.
Yeah, last week we talked about the importance of having a real financial plan and not just a collection of products or investments. When someone says they're ready to have a financial advisor, how can they tell they're actually receiving comprehensive lifetime financial planning?
Yeah, that's a great starting point for today because a lot of people assume that financial planning is investment management, right? I talk to people all the time like, oh, I already have a financial planner. And when we actually sit down, they have a money manager. And it's an important thing to notate because money management is it's an important but a small part of financial planning. A true financial plan should address all aspects of your personal financial life. And then also if you're a business owner, it should touch on those as well. So that's your cash reserves, your debt management, the investments that we talk about, and then also for taking a look at like your risk. What risk do you have to your financial situation? And that goes across all various types of insurance products that we take a look at for you. So, but kind of going back to the very, very beginning of how we operate, the thing that we go back to kind of like the lighthouse in the storm, right, is the financial roadmap, which is that initial conversation that we have with everybody who is a potential client where we dig deep on the importance of money and find out what really drives their decision making when it comes to their money, their investments, savings, retirement, all of that, because being able to figure that out kind of drives every recommendation that we make and makes it to where we can truly give them great advice. And so at the end of that, you can kind of picture your situation is that you have all sorts of things talked about, not just investment management. And, investment management is kind of in the news a lot. We're always getting market updates and things like that, but it's very important, but it's not the only part of your financial world.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. When most people sit down with a financial advisor today, what does that relationship typically look like?
There's two typical, I'll talk about the two typical structures that are set up and then also how we operate at Financial Planning HQ. But the two most common ones are, of course, the assets under management model, where, you go to your advisor. He, again, does the investment management for you and charges you a percentage of your assets. That's very common with most financial advisors. And the other is commission-based, right? Sales. I'm sure we've all sat down with somebody who you go talk to them and then they show you the fancy new life insurance product or disability product, whatever it is. Those are the two most common. The way we operate with Financial Planning HQ is, and I want to go back, neither of those are inherently bad. It's important to work with a financial advisor, especially as you kind of progress through life. So working with someone is important. I don't want to, talk down on that. But at Financial Planning HQ, we do a flat fee approach, which eliminates a lot of that salesy kind of things that we run into when you talk to financial advisors, because we're not incentivized to sell you anything. We don't offer products and we don't charge a fee for asset management. So we get rid of all of that. And you can kind of feel from that type of relationship that you're getting very unbiased advice, because we don't stand to make more or less money if we do or don't sell you whatever product.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
For someone listening right now who does work with an advisor, what are a few signs they might not actually be receiving the level of planning they think they are?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if you're meeting with your advisor and the whole conversation revolves around like investment performance, how your account did, and that's like every time you meet with them, whether that's once or twice, 3 times a year, whatever it is, then you're missing the other aspects of financial planning. You have the money manager aspect of it down, which is great, but you're missing all the other aspects, which are equally as important. So it's important that you realize that, and you can talk to somebody who can handle the whole thing for you, because you want to make sure that the advice you're getting is at the really tippy top level, especially when you realize what you're paying in fees, that there may be something better out there. Somebody who's going to take a look at your cash reserves, your debt, your goal planning. That's a huge, huge part of what we do. Really, the most fun part about my job is helping my clients accomplish their goals. I get really excited talking about it, because it's like they're from the beginning, and then you
Right.
kind of see them progress, and it's like, man, you can really do these things if you really just kind of put your head down and get after it. So I think that's that's how I'd answer that. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any resources for the listeners?
I do. If somebody wanted to reach out to me, my direct line is 210-748-1937. And I, of course, I offer complimentary consultations for my clients. So the financial roadmap experience is free of charge. And if we have some time, Todd, I think we do have a few extra minutes. I did want to talk about a few examples of some clients, some things that I have seen just out in the industry, and they kind of caught my eye in terms of like things that people could look for, where they kind of had that aha moment where they realized there's something outside of the investment management world out there.
Awesome. Tell us.
Sure. And the first one that comes to mind is this elderly couple that I met with. I met them probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And they were pretty happy with their current money manager. The accounts were doing well. But I told them anyways, let's have a financial roadmap meeting. It'll be fun. It's a little bit like a therapy session. You really find out what your spouse is thinking, right? And we sat down, got towards the end of the financial roadmap meeting, where I take a look at documents, and I discovered that, they had a fair amount of money, and they were paying 1.5% in fees. And when I kind of quantified for them, hey, this is, well into the 5 figures that you're paying in investment management fees each year. How does that make you feel, right? Do you feel like you're getting your bang for your buck paying this? And, they kind of sat there and looked at each other, and they're like, well, I don't think so, because that's a lot of money. And I didn't realize that was coming out of my account,
Right.
which most people do not. You get that fee, 1%, 1.5%. It's like, okay, that sounds like not that much, but
Right.
bigger the portfolio gets, the more you're paying in fees.
Right.
So that's a big part of it. And I think an initial conversation to have with your existing advisor would be like, hey, what am I paying in dollars and cents? And, is that the best way for me to be charged as a client? The other one that comes to mind is a business owner client that I've been working with, where she came to me. She's she's very smart, very business savvy, does a lot of good things on her own, but she's like, I'm overwhelmed. I'm running my business. Personal finance is something that I know a lot about, but I don't want to do it.
Right.
And that's a perfect segue, because I can really step in and take all of that off their plate. And we've kind of started the process of doing multiple different things. The biggest is getting a business valuation done, where they had mentioned to me in the financial roadmap, where they're like, hey, we're saving money and all that stuff, but we want to retire young. Like, we view this business as an investment. We need to know what it's worth if we sell it, 5-10 years down the road, so we can travel and retire at, 50 years old, which is what they wanted to do.
Wow.
And, I was like, great idea. I can get that done for you. So we started that process. It's been a lot. It's tedious, but this has given them the peace of mind. They're like, hey, this is attainable. This is doable. And, we're able to make this work as long as the business keeps growing and we can sell it for X amount of dollars. For them, that's been very valuable, and that's hard to find with other advisors, because that's not typically something that somebody would do, because they're not thinking about a business valuation. They're thinking about, I want to sell you my investment portfolio, or whatever it is. And the last one is looking at, we're almost, or I guess we are in tax season right now.
Yeah.
Everyone's favorite time of year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think about another client that I'm working with where, we're having these tax projections done well in advance so they know exactly what they're going to estimate paying,
Mm-hmm.
but then also using their bookkeeper and their CPA to come up with strategies for reducing that way ahead of the game and even looking forward to the end of this year.
I'm sure they're happy about that.
Yes, it's always you get a great look from a client when you tell them, hey, we're going to be able to save you some money on
Mm-hmm.
taxes, right? So those are a couple of things that come to mind and what we offer to our clients, where it's just really a large scope of your whole financial world and not just your investments. And that's really what I want the listeners to take away from today, is that there's a higher level of service out there. And Financial Planning HQ, we do a great job of offering that.
And how can they find you?
So we have our website. We're www.financialplanninghq.net. If somebody wants to speak with me directly, my direct line is 210-748-1937.
Great. Call Financial Planning HQ. St. Patrick's Day is coming up. So,
Tuesday,
do
yeah.
you have any clients that rely on luck?
We try to eliminate the luck factor as best as we can. If one of my clients wins the lottery, that's great.
Yeah. Well,
But
thank
yeah,
you for being on the show for the Financial Focus.
of course, Todd, it's always great to be here. Thank you.
We got to take a break, but when we come back, we'll be talking about some hidden legal issue blind spots, then sinners and saints, and finally, we're going to talk a whole lot about legacy. Stay tuned. Now it's time to discover your hidden legal issue blind spots by listening to me talk about the law on the radio. Today we're going to be talking about last wills, living wills, and living trusts. Which will are you missing from your estate plan? Well, you're probably not missing the last will because you hear me talk about that a lot. Everybody over the age of 18 needs to have a last will to name their executor and to name their beneficiaries. And you know that has to be legally valid. It has to be written according to the Texas Estates Code. And so a lot of people ask me, hey, can I just write my own will? Well, you can, but should you? I don't know. You know, you can probably find instructions on the internet about how to take your own appendix out, but would you really want to do that? If you make a mistake, how are you going to get it repaired? It's the same thing with the last will. How is that different from a living will? Well, the living will is really that document that you sign when you have a strong preference that if you were in a coma or a vegetative state, and it was terminal or irreversible, whether or not you would want to withhold or withdraw life support or whether you would want to be kept alive. That's the living will. So, what about the living trust? Well, that's a trust that you establish during your lifetime, and you name successor trustees to manage the assets that the trust owns. And it says how you want to be taken care of if you're disabled or incapacitated. And it also says who will receive your assets after you pass away, how, when, and in what way. So that's the last will, the living will, and the living trust. And those things are all different. They just have words that are similar, which reminds me 20 years ago when I was in law school, I had a professor that was helping us prepare for the final exam of the course. I think it was Texas Civil Procedure. And he was telling us that we were going to have essays. And one of the students, definitely not me, asked, Professor, if we answer the question, but we don't use the words that you want us to use to describe the civil process that's the heart of the question, will we get credit for that? And you know what he said? He said, no, words matter. The meaning of words matters. And so that's why it's advisable for an attorney to create and draft and design and help you implement your estate plan. Because if you get these three things mixed up, last will, living will, and living trust, you could be up the creek without a paddle. You know, years ago, I ran into uh, the heir or the beneficiary of a deceased person, and they brought me this document that said living trust at the top, and then it named an executor to wrap up the affairs. And so I call this a Frankenstein document. It was a little bit living trust and a little bit last will, and it created a problem, of course, because it named an executor. I filed it for probate, and that for that reason, and another reason too, that there were no assets titled in the name of the living trust. And so if the trust doesn't own these assets, then the deceased person's estate owns the assets. And so that's probate's the process of wrapping up those affairs, paying the bills, and distributing the property to the beneficiaries. So you can just imagine what people are doing trying to write their own will or trust in this circumstance. So those are some hidden legal issue blind spots that I wanted to address with you before I talk about uh, the will that you might be missing from your estate plan. But before I get to that, I want to talk about the sinners and the saints. Okay, how do you like the new music? Pretty terrific. So today's saint, I like to talk about the sinners and the saints because Martin Luther, the famous theologian that nailed his 95 Thesis to the church door, 1517, said that we're all sinners and saints. We're born sinners because Adam and Eve sinned, and but because of Jesus, his sacrifice and resurrection, we've been forgiven and absolved. But I like to talk about the saints and the sinners. Somebody in the news that has done something terrific, and maybe somebody that's made a mistake or committed a crime. But today I'm going to focus on St. Patrick because St. Patrick's Day is coming up. And so I asked Grok, that's the artificial intelligence for X, formerly known as Twitter, tell me about St. Patrick. And I don't know if all of this is true. There's a lot of myths and mysteriousness around all of the people that are named saints, I think. I didn't grow up in the Catholic Church, and so I don't know the church's teaching on this. But this is what Grok said, that St. Patrick wasn't born a saint. In fact, he didn't have a very strong faith until it's said that he got kidnapped by some Irishmen that came into Scotland and raided his town, took him as a slave, and he was a shepherd in some very harsh conditions. And he weathered those storms with prayer and faith in Christianity. And somehow he found a way to escape. He went back to his hometown, and then he had a revelation that he should go back to Ireland. Well, he didn't go back right away. He went and learned theology, I think in France somewhere. He eventually did make his way back to Ireland, and his focus was converting Irish pagans to the Christian faith. And the myth is that he expelled all the snakes from Ireland. But that might be a myth. It just might be an analogy of him converting pagans to Christianity. But that's something that he's known for. Another thing is the clover, the three-leaf clover, which he used as a symbol to explain Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So just like most holidays, there's a lot that has changed over hundreds of years, and where he's buried, they would have a celebration on the anniversary of his death, and that was known as St. Patrick's Day. So what do you do on St. Patrick's Day? Do you like to drink green beer? Do you like to go down to San Antonio River Walk and see the Green River? Do you like to go to the parades? I don't do much of any of that because, like I said, I'm not Catholic and it's not a Protestant holiday. But anyway, I did go to the St. Patrick's Day parade in New York City one time with my daughter, which was quite a spectacle. I mean, it was a really big deal. There was a huge crowd, and I had to make sure and hold her hand so she didn't get lost. But that's the saint for today. And so I also want to remind you that you can find previous episodes of Talk Law Radio on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and click the magnifying glass, type Talk Law Radio, and look for the Lady Justice logo with the red, white, and blue colors and click subscribe. That way you can get notified when new episodes are posted, and you can watch them in bite-sized segments, 10, 12, 14 minutes sometimes, and you can even listen while you're walking the dog, washing the dishes, or working in the garage. That'd be a big help to me. Go to YouTube and search for Talk Law Radio. Also, we're on podcasts everywhere. So if you hear an episode that you really like and you want to share it with your friends, you can go on your smart device, your cell phone, and click that share link and share it in a text. That way, your friends and family can be just as informed as you are about these hidden legal issue blind spots, and you won't feel like you're the smartest person in the room trying to explain everything to everybody. Say, hey, listen to Todd Marquardt on Talk Law Radio. He's on the radio, he's on Facebook, he's on YouTube, he's on podcasts everywhere. Oh, and you can find archive episodes on talklawradio.com. Just scroll down and look for the subject that interests you, whether it's last wills, living trusts, or tax protected inheritance plans. Also, new businesses and old businesses, which might have issues with corporations, contracts, or lawsuits. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. In the beginning, God had one law: don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then he gave Moses the 10 Commandments. And now we have municipal, state, and federal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws, laws that might impact you without you knowing it. So tune in to Talk Law Radio every Saturday morning and Sunday afternoon, or listen on podcasts anytime, Facebook or YouTube. You can also go to talklawradio.com. I'm starting the legacy segment a little early because I have a lot to say.
And now, it's time for the Talk Law Radio Legacy Spotlight. What's your legacy? Sponsored by Marquardt Law Firm.
So which will are you missing from your estate plan? You've heard of the living will, you've heard of the last will, and you've heard of the living trust, but have you ever heard of an ethical will? What is an ethical will? Why is it useful, and how do you make one? Well, your living will directs your physician and family to either pull the plug or continue life support. Your last will nominates your executor and bequests your assets and property to your beneficiaries. Your ethical will informs, educates, and advises your loved ones about your values. The oldest known ethical will was the blessing Jacob gave to Joseph. Jacob begins with a statement of his faith. He says, quote, "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life long to this day." That was Genesis 48:15. And then he continues, quote, "The angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth." That's from Genesis 48:16. The second part of the blessing are the wishes and hopes Jacob had for his grandchildren. The traditional blessing serves as an ethical will and then continued in England. In England, prior to the 18th century, it was common to include a statement of faith in the preamble of a last will and testament. I've done a few of those for my clients. If a client of mine wears their heart on their sleeve and their faith on their forehead, I ask them, do you want a preamble, a statement of faith in your will? But ethical wills are not always religious. Some values serve to inspire children and grandchildren to carry on the family wealth, success, or reputation. Stephen Covey, the author of Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, is well known for his philosophy to live, to learn, to love, and to leave a legacy. So, writing an ethical will is useful for your loved ones, whether you're wealthy or whether your assets are modest. You might model your ethical will after the decedent in Brewster's Millions to teach beneficiaries that money doesn't equal happiness. Have you seen Brewster's Millions? It's got Richard Pryor in it. It's hilarious. I highly recommend it. Although it's not recommended for small children, there's probably some cursing going on there. Your ethical will might remind the family that there's no inheritance because the assets were used to pay for vacations or education. An ethical will can be written into your last will, but it isn't required, and we don't recommend it. We discourage writing statements about hopes and wishes in a will because some people might confuse what lawyers call precatory statements with words that are used to affect the transfer of ownership of assets or property. Instead, your ethics and values should be written in a document separate from your last will. So making two documents, an ethical will and a last will, make it clear which statements are legally binding and which are not. I want to tell you a quick story. So I know this guy, Lenny. He went on vacation and asked his friend Bobby to watch over his house. About a week later, Lenny calls Bobby and says, "How's my cat?" Bobby hesitated and sadly told Lenny that his cat had died. "What? You shouldn't have broke the news to me like that. You should have done it slowly. The first time I called, you should have told me that my cat was on the roof. The second time I called, you should have said there's no way to get him down. The third time I called, you should have told me that you tried to get the cat off the roof, but she fell down and died." Bobby apologized. About a week later, Lenny called again and asked, "How's my granny doing?" There was a long silence, and then Bobby replied, "Well, she's on the roof." Yeah, it's funny to me. Okay, so in the history of ethical wills, the Jewish tradition is that there's a lot of them out there. If you just Google ethical wills, you'll run across a lot of Jewish focused ethical wills. And this one, I'm going to read just a little bit of a famous one, ethical will of Judah Tibon from France. And he says, "My son, list to my precepts." Now, this is old language, so it's not that I lost the ability to speak, but these are the actual words. "Neglect none of my injunctions. Set my admonition before your eyes. Thus shall you prosper and prolong your days in pleasantness." That's just the beginning. Now, this is very long. If you want me to send you the link where you can read this in its full text, email me at host@talklawradio.com. That's HOS as in Sam, T as in Timothy, at talklawradio.com, and I'll send you the link for the full thing. It's called A Father's Admonition. Your ethical will can leave your values. If you spent your whole life trying to impress upon your family members what your values were, but you feel like an alien, you feel like that they didn't ever hear you or understand you, then you can write it down on paper. And you know what's really cool? If you do it in your own handwriting, it means more because it's like your handwriting is a photograph of how you write. They can imagine what you were doing when you were writing that. And so it's pretty neat. I had some of the things that my mother wrote. She used to send a lot of greeting cards because her mother, my grandmother, managed a Hallmark store. And so we always had to have Hallmark greeting cards. In fact, when us kids would give her greeting cards, she'd open it from the envelope and immediately turn it onto its back to see if it was a Hallmark genuine card. But anyway, I digress. Your ethical will can leave your values. So I was looking at the definition of the word value, and so I asked my friend Melody, who's an artist. I said one of the definitions of values said that the word originated as a term that artists would use when they were painting. So I asked Melody about this, and she said that value in color refers to lightness and darkness. The lighter a color is, the higher value it is, and the darker it is, the lower the value. And that just resonated with me because when the Bible talks about light and darkness, it says that the light is is something that we should go towards the light. Those are the good things. Um, Only bad things happen in the darkness. And so Jesus was the light of the world. And so that's a higher value. Some values, I did this document. I tried to list out every single value that I could think of. And believe it or not, somebody already did it. And his name is Steve Pavlina. It's on his blog. And if you want a copy of this, I just made a whole list. I've got like, let's see how many there are, 418 values. And so I think what I'm going to do, haven't done this for my own kids yet, but maybe I'll just highlight the ones that I think that are the most important to me or that reflect me so that they can remember me. I'll send you this document also if you email me at host@talklawradio.com. That's HOST@talklawradio.com. But I thought that was really neat to put that together so that people knew what values were. You have any friends or family that don't know what their values are? I did an interview for a new worker bee at Marquardt Law Firm a couple of months ago. And I asked her, how do you know right from wrong? And she couldn't tell me. Trust me, it's true. And so I asked her, have you killed anybody? And she said no. And I said, well, why not? Because she couldn't tell me what was right from wrong. And so I didn't end up hiring her because I was worried that in her day-to-day work at my law office that she wouldn't know right from wrong. Well, I got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more about ethical wills. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt, and we're talking about ethical wills. Is it missing from your estate plan? You probably already have the last will and testament. Probably already have the living will, which in Texas is known as the directive to physicians. You might even have a living trust. But if you don't have the ethical will, your family might be missing out on a piece of you that they will really cherish. And you can write these on a piece of notebook paper. It doesn't even have to be well written or good. Just start putting your thoughts down on paper. Things like blessings that you hope that your family will have, lessons that you've learned, hopes that you have for their future, the values that made you who you are, or just some memories that they can look back on from time to time to remember you. To be, to become, to have, to learn, to share, to overcome, to build, to change, to enlighten, and to give. Or you can talk about war stories. Those are things that people cherish and value. You can talk about your genealogy, your heritage. I used to listen to National Public Radio, and they had this segment called StoryCorps. And their mission was to preserve and share humanity's stories in order to build connections between people and create a more just and compassionate world. A couple of weeks ago, I had a guest, Stuart Waldenmeyer, who talked about using Zoom video conferencing to record yourself, sort of like StoryCorps used to do, telling your story. You record it, and then your family can watch those videos and remember you. Think to yourself, have I fulfilled my purpose? How will I be remembered? Do you want your name on a street sign? Have you ever seen Wurzbach and Vance Jackson? Those were people that built San Antonio. Maybe you'll get your name on a street sign someday. Or do you want a building to be named after you for contributions that you made to a college? I'll have another document that you might want to help you brainstorm about this. And I got the idea from my mom. She had a lot of collectible things that she wanted us kids to have, but she wanted us to know where it came from. And so she would write little post-it notes and put it on the back of frames and dishes and things like that about what it meant to her. The history of the family was important to her. So I have this worksheet. It says it's not a valid last will and testament. It is your notes about why you made a gift. So I have a column that says, I gave, you describe the thing, to the name of the person you want to receive it, because, and then you write your reason for the gift or the values that it represents or where it came from. And I'll email it to you if you email me at host@talklawradio.com. That's HOST@talklawradio.com. It's a worksheet that helps you describe your values or the reason that you're giving little family knickknacks or heirlooms. I looked up the word ethical, and the definition I got means pertaining to or dealing with morals or to right and wrong in conduct. So I think it's good for you to teach those things to your kids while you're alive or to your friends and family members. And you can also keep teaching after you're gone. Why is this important to you? Well, why is it important to me? Well, my mom's dad, he died young, 60 years old, almost right after he retired from pancreatic cancer. The only thing I remember about my mom's, well, it's not the only thing, but one thing I do remember is that he earned the Purple Heart in Korea, and he had a tattoo of a naked lady on his forearm. Oh yeah, and he rode a motorcycle. And my mama would tell me that the reason he stopped riding the motorcycle is because he crashed it. And after the crash, she said it's either me or the motorcycle. He chose her, and she was bragging about it. My dad's dad, on the other hand, he didn't write legacy letters or anything like that, but I do remember what he said. He said, the most important things in life are not things. It's your Lord and Savior and your family. And he was a great example. He was always in church, reading the Bible, or watching youth athletics, faith and family. And it might be important to you because psychologists say that we understand ourselves better when we understand our past and our heritage and our family. You might want to use your ethical will or even the inheritance that you leave to encourage education, educating your offspring or other people's offspring. You can continue teaching from the grave. You can encourage people to take care of those who are less fortunate. And one way that we do this in the Living Trust, we can have a special incentive clause for the beneficiary's trust. You can encourage the beneficiary to pursue an education, whether that's college or trade school or other certificates. You can encourage the beneficiary to be gainfully employed with a view toward being financially self-sufficient. You can encourage the beneficiary to be a law-abiding member of society. You can encourage the beneficiary to be a productive member of society by making meaningful and positive contributions to family, community, and society. You can encourage the beneficiary to engage in entrepreneurial activities. You can encourage the beneficiary to engage in creative activities. You can encourage the beneficiary to handle money responsibly and avoid wasteful spending. You can encourage the beneficiary to act with empathy, thoughtfulness, kindness, and compassion toward others. You can encourage the beneficiary to develop healthy and meaningful relationships. You can encourage the beneficiary to make contributions of time, money, or both to charity. You can encourage the beneficiary to maintain a physically and mentally healthy lifestyle. And then you can decide whether you want another trustee to supervise your beneficiary to make sure that they are exhibiting those positive behaviors and avoiding the negative behaviors. You can make their inheritance conditional on those things. It just depends on how important it is to you. Does it matter to you what your beneficiaries do with their inheritance? If it does, call an attorney at Marquardt Law Firm, 210-530-4278. Call Marquardt Law Firm at 210-530-4278. And an attorney can talk to you about those incentive provisions for a trust. Do you want to leave something more meaningful than a fistful of cash to a bunch of greedy and ungrateful family members? Maybe the only thing you have to leave is your integrity, your character, or a chance to be remembered when you don't have the money to get a building named after you. It could serve as a therapeutic goodbye for you or for them. So if the last will states what the gift is, the ethical will can explain why you're giving it. This might help shape how they remember you. You know, former presidents of the United States like to write their memoir. The reason they do that is because they want to have a hand in shaping how history remembers them and what they accomplished in their office. How will people remember you? How would you want to be remembered? What you did, what you said, how you made them feel? Here's a quote from Sir Isaac Newton. I don't know what I may seem to the world, but as to myself, I seem to have been only like a boy, playing on the seashore and diverting myself now and then in finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than the ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me. You can always write your own obituary too. Here's one that I found. Veteran Pillsbury spokesman Poppin' Fresh died yesterday of a severe yeast infection. He was 71. Known to friends as Brown and Serve, Fresh was an avid gardener and tennis player. Fresh was buried in one of the largest funeral ceremonies in recent years. Dozens of celebrities turned out, including Mrs. Buttersworth, California Raisins, Hungry Jack, Aunt Jemima, Betty Crocker, the Hostess Twinkies, and Skippy. The grief side was piled high with flowers as longtime friend Aunt Jemima delivered the eulogy, describing Fresh as a man who never knew how much he was needed. Well, that's it for Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt. I'll talk to you later.
Most families don't realize they have hidden legal blind spots until it's too late. Wills, trusts, Medicaid planning, even protecting a business. These are the kinds of issues attorney Todd Marquardt helps uncover before they become problems. Todd is the host of Talk Law Radio, where each week he guides listeners through the legal challenges families, veterans, and business owners face, while showing them the practical steps to protect what matters most. Catch Talk Law Radio, Saturdays at 11 a.m. on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, 6:30 a.m. The Word, and now in Houston on AM 1070 and 103.3 FM The Answer, or anytime on YouTube. Planning isn't just about documents. It's about peace of mind, security for loved ones, and building a legacy that lasts. Don't wait for a crisis. Do it before you die.